Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jack Buckley. I'm the program director here at the UCLA Anesthesia program. I'd like to introduce Dr. Kennison. He's going to start off our opening remarks. He's our chair of the department. Dr. Kennison, if you'd like to proceed.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Buckley. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Maxime Kennison. I'm the chair here of the Department of Anesthesiology and Perioperative Medicine at UCLA. So welcome everyone to UCLA. It's a great pleasure to have you here. I have to admit, I would rather have you in person. I would rather get the chance to meet you in person. But as you know, we still have a lot of things that we have to be very careful about. That we as a department, as a group of individuals, we value very highly, and we are committed to the health of our residents, our trainees, our faculty, our staff, nurses, and that's why we want to make sure that we still protect everyone from the pandemics that's still going on. So that's why we are still having this open house virtual, and some of the interviews also virtual. I hope you'll get the chance to appreciate our department, to get a good sense of who we are as people. We have strong values that I'd be happy to share with you when we interview. But some of the core values that we have is that we are obviously dedicated to excellence in absolutely all aspects of academic medicine, whether it's patient care, education, research, community engagement. We want all these missions that are always in tension with each other to always be operated at the highest level. We also live in one of the most exciting cities in the world, as you know, Los Angeles, which is a huge metropole with a lot of opportunities everywhere. And we embrace the idea of Los Angeles as a city that's extremely diverse, inclusive, a city that tends to sometimes go a little bit slow. The traffic is bad, you know, in Los Angeles, but also able to pair this aspect of the city with one of the most innovative and thrilling city in the world. You'll see that you'll get the chance to meet with some of our research and education team. You'll meet with the Vice Chair for Education, Dr. Turner, the Program Director, Dr. Buckley, the Associate Program Director, Dr. Mayobui, and then you'll see that we have Associate Program Director basically for all of the missions that we want our residents to be fluent with for quality, research, and all the different missions that we want to deliver. One thing that I like to think about when I think about the training program at UCLA are two things. The first thing is that when you go to a residency program, every residency program is going to be able to train you in order for you to become an anesthesiologist. What we have at UCLA is that we are delivering one of the highest level of care that you can meet anywhere in the nation. You'll see some of the ranking we have as a hospital. We'll discuss the quality of the care, the acuity of the care that we take care of at UCLA. But what we really want to propose and to offer to our residents is that besides offering you the training of becoming a professional anesthesiologist, we want to be a place where you're going to have at the end of your training here, not only the opportunity to get a job somewhere, but more importantly, the opportunity to have a career long-term for you as a professional anesthesiologist, whether you decide to be a leader in clinical care, education, research, community engagement, professional activities, advocacy. I like to think that pretty much all the opportunities that you want to have, you will find them here at UCLA, whether it's in our department or on campus, or even outside of the main hospital with some of the other hospitals that we engage with. You will find these opportunities, and you will not only be trained to get a job at the end of your residency, but you will have the opportunity to have a full career in front of you. With that, I'm happy to now introduce Dr. Julie Turner. Dr. Julie Turner is the Vice Chair for Education here in the department. So not every department has a Vice Chair for Education. For us, it's very important because we have the residency program, and then we have the fellowship programs. And it's extremely important to integrate fellowships and residency. Why? Because if you decide to not do a residency in your career, and then you go and work right after as a clinician, right after residency, you need to still be very fluent with some of the subspecialty because you'll take care of pediatric patients. You may in some places have to do cardiac anesthesia while you don't have a fellowship in cardiac anesthesia. So the interactions between the residency and the fellowships program are extremely important. And you also need to be completely integrated with some of the other trainings, like the research training. So the role of the Vice Chair for Education that Dr. Turner is occupying right now is to make sure that there is integration between all the different missions and all the different parts of the training of a resident or a fellow. So with that, Dr. Turner, please, it's your turn.
All right, thanks, Dr. Cannison. We really appreciate the introduction. And fortunately for me, you did some of the things that I'm supposed to do in my brief time on this call. So like Dr. Cannison said, I just want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to learn a little bit more about our program. We are, as you all know, going to be interviewing virtually this year, just like we did last year, and as are all programs across the country. So we really think this is an important opportunity for you to learn about who we are, what we stand for, and what we're going to try to do if you come here for your training. So I'm going to just introduce you to our residency program leadership team, and I'll go through some slides with that, and our education staff. You're also going to get an opportunity to meet a couple of other faculty who we think are potentially critical in your training. One is Nirav Kamdar, who is our fellowship director for perioperative anesthesia and perioperative medicine, and also has a joint appointment in the Anderson School of Business and is helps with or co-chairs our biodesign program here at UCLA, which is one of the few in the country. And very importantly, also, you're going to meet Dr. Jennifer Lucero, who's our Vice Chair for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We're very excited that she's going to be able to present to you today about her vision and her role in our department and how important that is and some of the things that we're doing as a department. And then finally, we're going to introduce you to our chief residents, who we hope will have an opportunity to talk to you about some of their goals and some of the things that they've been doing to expand and improve our residency program. And then finally, we're going to leave time for you, some questions that you guys have submitted. Dr. Buckley and Dr. Mayabui will be answering those. And then we're going to have the breakout sessions, and you'll have an opportunity to go to multiple of the breakout sessions so that you can meet with some of our residents and learn a little bit more about who we are. So with that, we're going to get started through a few slides here. And I just want you to know that you will have access to this recording, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. I'm not going to say all the words on all my slides, and I think most people aren't. There's a lot of information here, and you can go back and review things at your leisure. So first of all, along the lines of what Dr. Cannison said, I think it's important to talk about our mission and what is our educational mission. First and foremost, it's to provide superior clinical training in the management of complex patients and surgeries. Complex patients and surgeries are our specialty here. We really want to encourage and support scholarly inquiry from all trainees and to encourage all trainees to contribute to the body of anesthesia knowledge. Another important thing that you'll learn about some of the things we do. And then finally, we want to educate physician leaders, and not only leaders, but leaders who are compassionate and leaders who are actively engaged in supporting diversity, equity, and inclusion in all levels of healthcare. This is another important mission that we hope to accomplish if you come train with us. So like Dr. Cannison alluded to, we're the number one health system in California, which is the largest state, as you know, and we're number 3 in the nation. Along with that, we are in the top 10 of all anesthesia programs, anesthesia training programs across the country. And I just learned today that there are actually 159 programs. So we are very proud to be in the top 10. This is a picture from our recent graduation, which we were very, very happy to be able to have in person, which we did not get to do in 2020. And this is some of the people that you're going to meet if you come to train with us. And Dr. Cannison, you'll recognize. We'll go through the others here in just a minute. And all of the people that you see on the screen will be talking, in addition to Dr. Soban Umar. So Dr. Cannison told you I'm the Vice Chair for Education. I'm not going to go into all of my CV here. I will tell you that I'm very interested in education for a very, very long time. I work closely with the ACGME in some faculty development training courses that they have. I work with our GME here in the School of Medicine, and have been very engaged both within and outside of our department in education for many years. I will leave it at that. I've been vice chair for about a year now. I will be introducing to you shortly Dr. Jack Buckley. He's been residency program director since last year. He was my associate residency program director before that for about 6 years, 5 or 6 years. You can look at all of the slides and see where people trained. But what I do want you to understand is that most of the people on these slides are also not only very, very involved in our own training program here, but they have significant roles outside of UCLA and outside of our department. Dr. Buckley is an ABA board examiner. He helped establish and writes questions for the OSCE exam. He also runs an advisory group of program directors with the ASA. Dr. Maya Bowie is the Associate Residency Program Director. She's been in that role since last year. You can see where she trained. She is also a very senior member of the anesthesia liver transplant team, and she probably doesn't consider herself this, but she is very specialized in heart liver transplants and has done more of those than anybody else on the liver transplant team. And that's the kind of case that you can do with our faculty if you come here. She's also very involved in the School of Medicine on the admissions committee and a recently elected member of the faculty executive committee for UCLA. Jason Lee is our Associate Residency Program Director for Didactics and Curriculum Development. Jason has been very, very dedicated to education for many years. He trained at Mass General. He has been Teacher of the Year, including several times, and most recently this past year. He's one of only 30 faculty members across our School of Medicine to be named as an inaugural program of Educators for Excellence, and so he works very closely with the School of Medicine. Dr. Soban Umar is Associate Residency Program Director for Resident Research, and he's a prolific physician scientist. So not only does he do amazing work in the OR, but he spends the majority of his time doing research that also involves mentorship of medical students, residents, graduate students, and others. He's recently been named a reviewer for the NIH RIBT study section and for the FAIR grant, and he holds multiple NIH, DoD, and FAIR grants himself. He specializes in pulmonary vascular disease, including things like pulmonary hypertension, and has a very significant H index of 26. For somebody who is such a young faculty member, that's a very impressive number. Lauren Beck is our Associate Residency Program Director for Quality Improvement and Patient Safety, and she's been in this role since last year. And she was also awarded an Excellence in Teaching Award by our residents this year. She completed our perioperative medicine fellowship here at UCLA prior to starting on as faculty. So we're really excited to have her join this team. And then finally, a really important member of our team is actually from the internal medicine department, and this is Satya Patel. He's the Associate Residency Program Director for the anesthesia interns, and he's been in that role a few years. He's also in this small group of 30 Educators for Excellence at the DGSOM, and I just want to point out that that's 30 out of thousands of faculty. So this is a very, very select group of people. He's very interested in wellness and resident wellness in particular, and his appointment is primarily at the VA West Los Angeles. Unfortunately, fortunately for him, he's in India. He will not be joining us today. I finally want to introduce you to our education office team. Lucy Mendez is our residency coordinator and has been in our office for the whole time that I've been here. So we go way back. Lucine Terosian is our fellowships program coordinator and has been in that role for several years now. Susan Kim assists Lucine and is assistant fellowship coordinator. Jessica Delgado is our medical student education coordinator. So some of you may have already met or communicated with her. And then finally, Aurelie Gonzalez is our associate residency program coordinator, working very closely with Lucy and all of our residents. I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Buckley now, and he's going to take it from there. Thank you.
So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking to you really who I think our department, like the members of our department, and then kind of the interview process. We have 25 residents per year. We have fellowships in pretty much every major fellowship that exists. The big point I try to make during the interview day, and our residents will confirm it, is our fellows are really there for the residents' benefit, meaning you don't compete with the fellows for cases. Anytime a fellow is in a case, it's always with a resident. And you're never going to compete with the fellows for procedures because none of our fellows are doing a fellowship to learn to do an A-line, central line, those kind of things. So it's really a collaborative nature. And I think that's important because you don't want to be giving up, some of the most educational cases to the fellows. So we always have them residents and fellows working together. We have 150 clinical faculty, 22 attending anesthesiologists. So the attending anesthesiologists are board certified anesthesiologists that have decided to make their clinical practice focusing on anesthesia and not working with residents. And then about 38 CRNAs. So on any given day, about half of our cases are actually covered by non-residents. And this is important because this allows us to focus the most educational cases for the residents, and then everyone else will fill in the gaps. So on a given day, 20 to 40 faculty are actually working without residents simply because we've run out of residents for our case volume. And I think this is great because it really lets us maximize the educational experience on any given day for the residents. We have 8 NIH-funded lab groups. That puts us in the top 5 in the country every year for NIH funding. And I want to spend just a little bit of time just kind of talking about how we select our residents, because I think this is actually something fairly unique for our department. We have about 20 faculty that help me review the files. And of those 20 faculty, they'll read through your entire file, which is about 40 or 50 pages. Once those faculty members review the files, they'll then send it to myself and Dr. Mayabui, who will then make the ultimate decision about offering an interview. The reason we use so many people to review your files is I think it's very important to focus on every aspect of your file, not just one area, like for example, not like a step score. We do use the step scores to kind of create a very low bar, because ultimately I don't think a step score makes you an excellent doctor. It's just a sign your ability to pass a test. So once you reach that minimum level, we pretty much ignore the step scores for every other aspect. Which kind of brings us to the question, what are we really looking for? And the simple answer is I look at the entire file and just look for signs of success. And that could be academic success, that could be research success. We have a variety of residents that have done interesting, work. So some people have just been in the work industry. And any one of those things is a sign of success to me. And I think it works out well because we end up having a wide variety of residents with a significant amount of interest. So that's kind of what we ultimately look for. But we also like to look for, have you experienced challenges along the way? Because if you think about it, most of us have experienced a challenge somewhere along the way. And I like looking at what kind of challenges you've personally experienced and how you've dealt with those challenges and how that's actually impacted your career and kind of guided you on the way. So that's something that's also very important to us. Once we get the files, we'll be looking at them this week and the next 2 weeks. So we won't start sending out interviews until probably about the 3rd week of October. So the fact that none of you have heard from us is nothing to worry about because we haven't offered a single interview yet. And we'll basically be offering interviews from that portion of October till pretty much the middle or end of December. And we trickle the interviews out slowly just because it allows us to do a more in-depth review of everyone's records. So don't worry if it takes a long time to get an interview. We've looked at the data over many years. It doesn't actually matter if you interview with us on the first day or the last day. Every year we tend to always interview someone that matches with us on the last day of the interview. So it's nothing to worry about if it takes time to hear from us. Once we interview, you'll meet, we do 20-minute interviews, and you'll interview with about three faculty members plus 1 chief resident. The interview is meant to be as low stress as possible. We fully understand that it is an interview, so it's not a stress-free environment, but there's no trick questions. There's no, ethical questions. We just keep it very simple. We're going to look through your file and just kind of talk about the things that you've done up until this point and try to get to know you. So that's really all we're shooting for during that time. When you'll have multiple episodes to meet the residents, because what I found is the more residents you talk to, the more likely you are to want to come to our program. So we'll do events, unfortunately all virtual, but you'll be able to meet the residents the day before the interview, during the interview day. And then we'll also hold numerous sessions after interviews that everyone that is interviews with us will be invited to. So it gives you numerous opportunities to meet a wide variety of residents. And we're now going to move on to Dr. Mayabui, who's going to tell you a little bit more about our department.
Hi there, good afternoon. I'm sorry that we can't all meet in person. So the clinical experience is an essential part of training for our residents. Patient care in the UCLA health systems and its affiliated hospitals provide the canvas of opportunity for this growth. We cover the bread and butter surgeries of the diverse populations of Los Angeles to the quaternary care for congenital heart patients, the multi-organ transplant surgeries, to the highly technical interventional procedures. Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center itself is a level 1 trauma center with 7 ICUs, almost 1 on every floor with 2 helipads on top. So after 4 years of training, these are the advanced fellowships that our residents have placed in for cardiothoracic anesthesiology, critical care medicine, OB anesthesiology, pain medicine, and pediatric anesthesiology. Despite the unique year that we've had over the last year, 15 out of our 24 graduating residents went into competitive fellowships on both the East Coast and the West Coast. This list here includes the highly desirable private practices in Southern California that our residents are recruited for and our alumni flourish in. This is an important slide. It represents the resident representation in the department and hospital. This is our education steering committee. It is comprised of the chief residents and the peer-selected class representatives, and we meet every month with the department chair and faculty education leaders. The people on the right that you don't recognize today are actually the vice chairs of our department, vice chair of clinical anesthesiology services, as well as our executive vice chair and our former chair of the department. Basically, we meet once a month, and our agenda is to listen to the concerns of the residents, as you see on the bottom row. This is kind of representative of the leadership and the philosophy of our department, where we sit and we want to hear the concerns and address them in a timely fashion. This year, for the CA1 basic exam, we had 100% pass rate. We had 4 people score in the top 10%, and the end result is that 100% of our graduates have board certification rate over the last 10 years, and this is the commitment that we have to our residents. We're very proud that many of our trainees also represent on the national front in scholarly activity and in the WARC, which is the Western Anesthesia Resident Conference. This is timely for our ASA meeting this weekend in San Diego. I will now hand it over to Dr. Buck to highlight individual resident successes and the other programs that our residents participate in doing their training with us.
Hi, everyone. So I just want to highlight some of the fantastic things our residents have done in the past, and then the things they're continuing to do now. So the first is Dr. Mariam Sarwari. She graduated actually last year and is now in pain fellowship. So she participated in the ABA Resident Scholar Program, under which she traveled to Washington, D.C. in March of 2021 to participate in a 4-week rotation that was designed to allow residents to experience political, legislative, and regulatory factors that affect the delivery of patient care. This rotation was approved by the ABA for residency credit, so that was great. It included also an award of $5,500 to offset travel and living expenses. So definitely something that we encourage in our residents if you'd like to participate that in the future. Next, we also have residents that have participated in global health programs. Here on the left, we have Dane Saxa. He was a CA3 last year, also graduated and is now actually attending here at UCLA. So if you come here, you'll get to work with him. But he was a recipient of the 2020 SEA HVO Fellowship. Unfortunately, he was supposed to go to Rwanda to teach anesthetists there, different techniques in anesthesia. He wasn't able to do that because of COVID, but he still got to participate. He instead created a 5-part lecture series on the basics of obstetric anesthesia, since maternal mortality is such a struggle in so many sub-Saharan countries. So he was still able to use that time to do some global health remotely. And then on the right, we have Anshul Prakash, also CA3 that graduated, who won the ASA 2020-2021 Resident International Anesthesia Scholarship. So opportunities for global health if you would like it as well. This is something, more close to home. So Dr. Ceci Canales is a current CA3. You can see her picture here over on the left, who is a co-president of the inaugural UCLA Minority Health Staff Organization Executive Board. This organization aims to help facilitate and catalyze anti-racism at UCLA, which represents the views and needs of its members in order to positively influence change within the organization, training programs, health system, community, and profession. So a lot of focus on equity and diversity here, and a lot of support for that as well. And then finally, just to highlight, we also have a resident-led wellness committee. The residents that are in charge are Samru Abraha, she's a current CA3, Kathy Cazares, who is a PGY1 and intern, Talia Dagger, who is a CA3, and Ali Subat, also CA3. And they are in charge of planning wellness events for the residency as a whole, and they have social hours at least one Friday afternoon a month, in addition to plenty of other events that they are currently working on. So emphasis on wellness, because we know everybody needs a little bit of that in their life as well. So with that, I am going to hand off to Dr. Umar to talk a little bit more about research.
All right, thank you everyone for attending. As you know, I'm Soban Umar. I'm the Associate Program Director for Resident Research and Scholarly Activity. I will start with highlighting some of our research track residents. And here on top, you can see Dr. Brittany Burton. She's a prolific physician scientist with multiple publications this year, last year, an ongoing track record of publications. She's a clinical researcher, outcomes researcher, and then John Park, who is a CA1, MD, PhD, and he's a basic science researcher. So you see the contrast. Both are on research track who get significant amount of time, and I'll talk about these research tracks in a minute. So these are some of their publications in high impact journals. So I'll highlight some of the research, ongoing research during times of COVID. So it's been very challenging. However, our residents took the lead. They actually published this very nice paper in Anesthesia and Analgesia as a special article on a novel negative pressure isolation device for aerosol containment of COVID-19 and other viruses. And here you can see some pictures and the cover of the journal. This study actually was recently converted into a clinical trial that was recently concluded, and hopefully we'll see the results being published. And Seb Kwan, a resident, is presenting the preliminary results at the ASA that's coming up in a couple of days. Now, as I discussed earlier, the residents who are on these research tracks, the first one is the Anesthesiology Resident Research Program. So this ARRP basically gives a regular 4-year residency in anesthesiology. However, there's dedicated research time in different years. And basically the research time increases as the residents go on in their clinical anesthesia years. And so we make sure that they have this protected time, they get mentorship, and that they're doing well and they're fulfilling their research accomplishments. And then the Scholars Program, the Anesthesiology Resident Scholars Program, it's a competitive 60-month program intended to train future clinician scientists. And right now we have Dr. Brittany Burton on this track. Recruitment usually begins early on. During the residency interview day, potential applicants will be identified early on and encouraged to apply. And research experience and future career plans must be identified in a letter of intent, and the letters of rec from research faculty will be required. So typically 1 to 2 applicants per year will be accepted, and they get a 10K stipend per year starting in CA1 year. So this track, the Scholars Program, is mentored by excellent mentors in our department or outside of the department, and they're expected to apply for competitive funding from FAIR, as well as to present at our annual scientific evening, WARC, and other national and international meetings. And here I'm just going to quickly browse through some of the publications by our resident physicians. And I'm just going to show some of the recent publications. You guys can check them out later on in the presentation, but I just included a few of the ones that are led by our residents. So, all right, with that, I'm going to give it to Dr. Jason Lee, who's the Associate Program Director for Education. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. Great to be here, and thank you all for coming. My name is Jason Lee. I'm one of the APDs, and I do a lot of work with the resident education. I just had this transition slide to show that we do a lot of teaching of the residents outside of the classroom. So you see here, we do some debriefment. We have simulation scenarios. We have residents give presentations to teach each other. And Dr. Kandra is going to talk after me, but he actually hosted a journal club and a rooftop movie watching on his rooftop in Santa Monica. So as a brief overview, our official kind of formal didactics for the residents are held every Tuesday in the afternoon from 3:30 to 5 p.m. This is protected time where residents are relieved from whatever duties they have to go to class-specific didactics. Some sessions are combined with multiple classes. And in general, there are monthly themes with reading assignments attached to them based on what class the resident is in. We also have theme-specific simulation sessions that are spread throughout the year. We also do some research sessions, including our scientific evening, where the residents will present their research at the end of the year. We hold professionalism workshops, as well as we do a lot of work with EDI, and we have special sessions with members of our EDI team on racial justice and healthcare disparities. We also hold a risk management session, and we have a series of lectures from visiting professors who come to do their grand rounds here at UCLA. And on top of all that, we have several longitudinal series that are run throughout the year that can be class specific or for the entire residency class. And as of now, all of our didactic sessions are in a hybrid mode of in-person versus Zoom. So this is actually nice though for our residents who are off-site at different locations, and they can simply Zoom in to join the lectures and didactics remotely. Here's an example of some of the themes, and they're more catered based on the class. So a lot of the basic concepts are covered for the CA1s, whereas the more subspecialty topics are for the CA2s. And here's just kind of a smattering of various kind of longitudinal series that we run throughout the year. So we have a series of journal clubs that's actually run by a lot of our research faculty, including Dr. Umar, who talked earlier, and that's class specific for the different classes. We also have some QI projects, and you met Dr. Beck earlier, and she's in charge of all of that. And so she runs that with the CA1s, and we'll do some review sessions later on for the senior residents. Some of our intensivists will do a POCUS series of training and help prepare them clinically, as well as prepare them for the OSCEs. We also have a lot of kind of practice management and kind of higher management, higher level type of courses and lectures for our senior residents to help prepare them afterwards. And we also do a series of board review and OSCE review for the CA3s. And we have a lot of faculty here who are part of the ABA and give these actual examinations. And so they're the ones that help run this session. And finally, we do have several mock orals that are given to all of our graduates, as well as our fellows and senior residents spread throughout. And I'm always open to feedback from the residents. And so last year I created a resident education committee composed of residents from different classes. And so if any of you are interested when you join, definitely do join this, because we meet on a monthly basis. And essentially I get feedback from all of you, and we kind of brainstorm different ideas to kind of improve our education and improve our didactics. And so some things that we came up together as a group and created over the past year was we flipped several of our classrooms. So we've had residents kind of co-lead didactics with attendings and kind of have interactive sessions with their colleagues. We've changed around our board review series kind of each year. We also started subspecialty knowledge cards. So that there's a checklist of kind of basic topics that residents should discuss on a certain rotation. And we also started a resident M&M where the residents kind of present their cases kind of to their fellow colleagues and kind of go over the different kind of difficult cases. And we're in the works of working on kind of our form of like a Wikipedia for anesthesia. And that's something that's in the works currently. And it looks like I'll be handing it off to Dr. Kamdar next.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate being here. My name is Nirav Kamdar. I am in the department. I'm the Director of Quality and Innovation of our department. I also have an MBA as my background training. Because we're in the heart of California, it's a hub for innovation, and our own department is highly proud of the innovations that we do, not only from our research escapade, but also thinking about how some of those inventions translate into market. And so alongside the residency, we actually have a fellowship program that's run by myself and another colleague in engineering, Jennifer McCaney. If we can advance the next slide, called biodesign. And for some of you that are healthcare entrepreneurs, you may have heard this education paradigm from other places around California and around the United States. And we have our own curriculum for healthcare medtech innovation at the UCLA campus. One of the key distinguishers about UCLA is that we're a unique campus that has a school of medicine, of a nationally known health system, a school of engineering, and a school of design, all within walking distance of each other. And that makes a great hub for cross-functional teams to form for innovation. And we find ourselves bringing all these groups together in a fellowship program, and our residents not only interact with them in our operating room spaces, but also co-develop with them throughout their time in residency over the course of projects that they see form through the program. So if we advance the next slide, really the mission of not only even within our own department, but even the biodesign program as a whole is advancing leadership and innovation in health tech leaders of tomorrow. And our own chair is a great example of moving innovations that come out of the laboratory out to market. And that's been moving our field in anesthesia forward. If we advance to the next slide, please. As I mentioned before, we bring multidisciplinary and cross-functional teams together from medicine, business, from the Anderson School of Business, the engineering school, as well as the design school, to all come together to actually scour for clinical problems. This not only happens in the operating room space, the anesthesia space, the surgical space, but it can even extend out into the ward medicine as well as to the home. And we look for problems to solve in medicine and also to invent solutions to those problems. Next slide. Just like you would have a research time and a research paradigm for doing formal laboratory and or translational research, the biodesign program is actually fashioned in somewhat of a similar way. When you're hypothesis generating during a research year, we actually have our fellows even interact with the residents to understand the clinical problems that are in the anesthesia space. During the research program, if you are designing experiments, in the biodesign program, you're actually designing prototypes and you're testing that prototype set either in the lab or amongst practitioners that would ultimately use the product or be the end users of the product. When we think about publishing papers and giving oral presentations at conferences, the corollary to that in the biodesign program is to develop business plans and to raise money in pitch competitions. And actually some of our teams even last year raised upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars for their first set of science that they're going to do with their invention set. Next slide, please. Can I get the next slide advanced? Maybe I'll try it myself. There we go. So to give a little bit more detail of how even a year of interaction like this works, we start in August with a boot camp that essentially is an intensive program that teaches some of the fundamentals of med tech development. And that includes people from science, people from industry. We have Gore and Medtronic and other companies come and talk to the fellow set about advancing some of their own ideas. We have them go into the clinical setting in order to identify clinical needs. That's our clinical immersion period. And that's where the residents actually often interact with these fellows. And from there, they start to invent and create concepts for their prototype designs. They create prototypes, eventually bringing it out to patent application, and the end goal being incorporation of a company. Next slide, please. And so when we scour the clinical space, we start with almost 300 working needs and problem points, and then we distill it down to one, and that's where all the innovation kind of happens around one particular need going forward in order to advance a technology to market and hopefully bring it out as a new company that we would see in the clinical space. So with that, I would end, and any of those on the line can always reach out to me. You can look me up on the web and get my UCLA email address, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. Okay. So I'm just going to request remote control, and then we'll go forward. So hello, I am Dr. Jennifer Lucero, and I serve the role of the Vice Chair of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion for the Department of Anesthesia. I also have another role that I serve in the School of Medicine as the Associate Dean of Admissions, where I oversee the medical school admissions, the financial aid office, and pipeline and outreach programs. So today I'm going to touch base on some sort of key elements to our equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm first going to start with sort of the 10,000-foot view, and then hone in on what we're doing within the Department of Anesthesia. And I think it's important when we think about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, what we call JEDI, at UCLA, because you can't have it within a silo. It can't be within a small group. It's in a much larger picture of where we fit into the whole system. So let me first jump into our sort of 10,000-foot view. So we have spent a large amount of resources, both in individuals and money, dollars spent, recruiting both our Vice Dean of Justice, Equity, our Vice Dean of Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, in addition to our HEDI, which is our Health, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion for the health system side. So that ability to recruit those individuals has allowed us to look at sort of the big picture of our goals and outcomes for each clinical department and each system within DGSOM and UCLA Health. And so we have here what we're developing for our department and other departments, a way of establishing outcomes and activities and goals for accountability and transparency for what we are going to do with justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. The reason I tell you this as a future resident is I think it's really important for you to understand the importance and power that we are placing in making real change and sustainable change, and the dedication that our department has on these roles of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. And so with that, I also want to alert you to, and you should have access to this. This is a web page which basically has our statement on diversity and inclusion, and also has our anti-racism roadmap. In addition to that, we have made a global effort in DGSOM for combating structural racism and looking at structural change. Here's some of the things that we have started to initiate. And one of the things that we'll hone in on is developing EDI committees across clinical departments. And so all of the departments, including the clinical departments, have been charged with developing a leadership structure and a committee that focuses on EDI. And so our department has done that, and we have committed resources, and I'm going to outline here what we're doing in anesthesia under justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, and outline kind of where we're involved with this. So as I mentioned, this sort of spans across the department. It's not just one small little area that we focus on. Equity, diversity, and inclusion actually spans across all the different parts of the department. So we created working groups which help facilitate our goals and our action items within EDI. So we have a recruitment working group, which you can see there is focused on our pipeline programs, increasing underrepresented in medicine and LGBTQIA community within the faculty, staff, CRNA residents, and fellows. We do this through outreach, innovative recruitment programs, and increasing our visibility. I've listed there our working group members. And you should know that residents are part of the EDI committee and are involved in the working groups. And so here is our retention working group, and you can see here, retention, we really think about the culture and climate, and we have several projects that we're working on, really looking at microaggressions, starting to change that to microaffirmations, and evaluating ways in which we can improve the climate and make it a more inclusive and diverse community. And there's our working groups. The other working group we have is career development. And so that is important. And you might be thinking, well, I'm a resident, I'm training, how is that important? Well, it's important because you need to start right now thinking about career development. So as you start to move along in your residency, thinking about fellowships, what your career pathway is going to be, and the career development working group is part of that on a global stage. So it's looking at our residents, our faculty, our staff. How do we continue to promote and help our faculty, our staff, our residents, and our fellows look at their career and think about ways in which they can continue to grow and look out 10 years from now and make sure that they're making the important commitments and work that they want to do. And so here's our working group members. And then our education. So you've gotten a chance to meet the education leadership, and we also have, there's some folks that are on part of the education team for residency that are also part of our working group. And education is broadly thought of in how do we educate our whole department on really important areas. We think about, curriculum development, microaggression, unconscious bias, aversive racism, stereotype threat, things like that, sort of just really expanding. And for many of you who have had this curriculum already started in medical school for you, this is going to be a continuation and growth within the Department of Anesthesia. We're also, we also work in conjunction with the School of Medicine, and we'll be rolling out our book club. You may, those of you who are students here, we're doing the book club on CAST for the School of Medicine, and we will be doing that in our department. And it's a nice way for us to build collaboration across both the School of Medicine and the health system. So those are the kind of things that we do within the education working group. And our research working group. You had a chance to hear the work that we do in research. We have residents that are working in these areas in health disparity. We want to build out a collaborative group. We also want to reach out to our colleagues in the surgical specialties. And so the working group members, who many of them you see are residents, and we have our faculty that are working on doing just that. And so within that structure, the goal is to really build out a collaborative working group that is going to start working in different areas, as anesthesia also impacts all the different areas. You will get to hear from the residents in ways in which the residents are involved, whether it's obstetrics, intensive care, pain, we also can do that and work in improving and reducing the health disparities. And so that's really what the research working group is doing. And so just to give you a highlight of how we work this, we have our quarterly meetings, we do our general updates, and our working groups will have each one of them rotates on spotlighting what they're doing. And they meet separately outside of the quarterly meetings to keep moving forward. And so this allows us to grow our EDI platform and we can collaborate across disciplines and then broadly the campus. We have a great connection with our Vice Dean of JEDI, who is working on projects with us, and anesthesia the goal is for us to be leading the way within the perioperative specialties. And so we would love for you all to come here and help lead the way with us. With that, I'm gonna switch back over.
Unmute myself.
Yeah, there we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Lucero. Hi, everybody. My name is Jake Melendrez. I'm one of the chief residents. I'm sitting here with Ryan Gamlin, and we have Annie Tran on the call joining us from an alternative site. But we just wanted to take a quick second to mention why we love UCLA and why we're very happy to meet all of you and hopefully introduce why we love UCLA so much. So specifically, UCLA known for taking care of very, very sick patients. Ryan right now is working in our cardiothoracic ICU where he's dealing with anywhere from 10 to 15 patients that are on extracorporeal membrane oxygenation or ECMO. Any day, you can take care of a wide variety of patients from an ASA1 all the way up to ASA 5E. So you're going to have very good clinical training if you come to UCLA. In terms of variety of cases, we do every type of transplant from intestinal transplant, liver, heart, kidney, lung, some of them in combination as well. We do complex neurosurgery, orthopedics. We do it all here. I know that you've met so many members of our team here today. I think that hopefully the takeaway from all this information is that you understand that essentially any interest that you have, professional or personal, you can pursue that here. And I think the UCLA provides a great number of opportunities for anybody to better themselves professionally and really reach your professional goals. In addition to that, as you start moving along in your career, when it comes time to start searching for jobs, Ryan and I are now at this stage having an alumni network like UCLA does, not just in Southern California, but a footprint across the country. It really allows for limitless possibilities to be able to say, hey, I'm looking to go and live on the East Coast because that's where my family is. Would you mind picking up the phone and making a call? And having very active members at UCLA in California Society of Anesthesiologists, the American Society of Anesthesiologists, having a past president of the American Society of Anesthesia, having those people who have their kind of connections across the country to be able to pick up the phone for you and say, hey, I want you to take a look at this person for a job. That really carries some weight. And then in addition to that, I think just talking about what our life is like here at UCLA, because while you will be working a lot coming to UCLA and getting really good clinical training, I think that enjoying your time outside of the hospital is really important. And I think that Ryan and I can attest to the fact that just last weekend, being post-call, finishing up on an early Saturday morning, and then being able to lace up some shoes and go for a run in the Santa Monica Mountains. Ryan and I actually both biked to work today. So I know that people talk about coming to a big city like Los Angeles and needing to have a car. But the reality is that the neighborhoods in Los Angeles can be very, very accessible via other means of transportation. You've got the beach, you've got mountains, you've got desert, any possible climate that you could be interested in. There's things here. This is a great food city. We've got Michelin stars here now, and the numbers just keep racking up. So essentially any interest that you could possibly have professionally, personally, you can pursue that at UCLA.
Yeah, I'd say so. For some folks, location will be a large part of how you decide where you'd like to rank. And for other folks, probably that's lower on your personal kind of rubric. But what I would say is living in Los Angeles, I can't imagine a person, where this location itself would knock this institution down on your list. Los Angeles is only a benefit. I think I hear concerns about cost of living, urban quality of life. Both of those I'll say, you know, I have 2 young children. I'm very into spending time outdoors. It's no problem from my perspective to have kids here in Los Angeles on our salary, to live in a nice neighborhood where you're happy to be raising your kids. And then certainly, as Jake has alluded to, it's really, really nice to know that 330 something or 350 something, depending on how climate change continues to work, days of the year, it's going to be dry, pleasantly dry and sunny, and you're going to be able to get out and enjoy your time outside of the hospital.
And I know that we'll bring this up at a certain point, especially when you talk about resident life in the breakout rooms, but having the benefits package included at UCLA include things like cost of living stipend and other things to make that transition to a Los Angeles lifestyle, which can sound expensive just saying that sentence. But those kind of things really help make it substantially more affordable. And on a day-to-day basis or on a week-to-week or month-to-month, I have no concerns about doing the things that I want to do and pursuing my hobbies outside of work.
You can live here comfortably and have fun. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think we're going to pass it off to Dr. Buckley and Dr. Mayabui for them to do the questions and answers, and we look forward to meeting you on the trail in a little bit later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Well, I find it, oops. Let's see if we can squeeze Dr. Mayabui in there. All right, we'll just get rid of it. As I'm fixing our screen, I found it interesting that they rode their bike to work. I was a resident here. I never drove my car to the hospital for the 3 years I was here. Rode my bike every day. It's actually very enjoyable. So having said that, we're going to try to run through some different questions that we saw that you already submitted. And we saw kind of a reoccurring theme. So we'll try to get through as many as we can. It was somewhat common to see people asking, what is the transition from being an intern to a resident like, and how do we deal with it? And we've been doing the same thing at least for the last 20 years, and I think it's highly effective. What we do is we bring the interns here, 6 of the interns each month from March to June, and we pair you up. I call it your buddy. And the reason we pair you up is there's a lot of technical things to learn in anesthesia, that you can't learn from a book. Meaning, how do you turn on the anesthesia machine, change the CO2 absorber, get the fluid warmer tubing to work? And by giving you a buddy, it just gives you someone to ask, and I think it makes the process a lot less stressful. And then what we do is every day in the afternoon, we break you out of the ORs and we do an hour to 2 hour lecture on a variety of the basic topics. And you get paired up, you and your buddy, with one attending for 2 weeks, and then a couple of attendees for the remaining 2 weeks. So that process, I think, really just makes the transition a lot more straightforward.
Yeah, and Dr. Buckley, I'm going to add that the people that do the 2-week proctoring are us. Like, we do it, the other 3 APDs do it. It's a highly select group of attendings that we personally choose. And there's a long list, so we have a lot of good choices. So we're the ones that, help the transition.
And then another question that we noticed is very common is wellness. And, wellness is, I'll readily admit, it was a challenge for us and pretty much every anesthesia program in the entire country last year due to COVID, and probably in the medical schools also. But so that's one of the things that we're really devoting a lot of time and energy into this year. We just did we called it Snacks with the PDs yesterday, where we brought in a variety of snacks. Dr. Mayabui went to a Japanese bakery and got a bunch of pastries. And we just kind of opened up the office and invited a bunch of residents in. It seemed to be a big hit. So that's something we're going to keep doing. We have numerous events, so monthly events where residents will go to a local restaurant and just spend some time together. We're going to also try to do the same monthly events, but it'll also include the faculty. So some of the events are just resident run, some of them are residents and faculty together. Fortunately, Dr. Kennison has been willing to, been very generous to ensure that we have adequate resources so that we can do these different events. Because I really do think it makes a difference with resident well-being and resiliency to spend time together with both their peers and also the faculty.
Yeah, and I just want to add that we're one of the larger programs, if not, the top 6 programs by size, but we definitely have a small program feel. And so the wellness and the community that we build is, we're kind of like a community that overshares. So we really want to get back to doing in-person communication and stuff like that. That's at the forefront of our minds. So.
And you can actually see my wellness table behind me. I was just noticing we have snacks that when people come into the office, they get, coffees and nuts and try to make it somewhat healthy. Another common question we noticed is, what about mental health? And I think that's an important one because, residency, no matter where you do it, is going to have challenges and it's going to potentially be stressful. And I think it's important for a program to support the residency through those tough times. So we have the good news is through the university, they have a very well-supported behavioral wellness center that, anytime we see residents, maybe they had a bad, case, bad event, just going through the normal life stresses that we all go through. I refer residents there on a somewhat regular basis, and I've gotten incredible feedback because they have psychologists there, counselors there. It's fully paid for by the university, so it makes it easy for me to send a resident there and just get some additional support. Another thing I think that's really important for both your mental but also physical wellness is just the ability to go to doctor's appointments. There was a time when the two of us trained that you went to a doctor's appointment when you were post-call, that's the only time you could go. But I think the two of us have realized that that's not the best approach. So we've developed a process that allows residents to actually just schedule regular doctor's appointments to just take care of themselves. And, I've tried to emphasize that, when residents get sick, I'm almost always telling them it's better to take a little bit longer off and get yourself well than to try to push it and hurt yourself in the process and ultimately miss more time. And the good news is the ABA has actually developed a very generous policy that allows, like, when people get injured or, different things can take up to 8 weeks of time off that gets full credit.
Yeah. And these programs that Dr. Buckley just mentioned are not just programs that we mentioned to list. Every time I talk to residents about Behavioral Wellness Center, they're like, oh, I'm already have visited it a couple times and stuff like that. And that makes me feel really good that people are using those things. So it is working, that it is, they're able to use the resources that we're providing. So. And
then another thing that we saw in the questions was also about just how do we deal when there's been a challenging case, because as Dr. Mayabu and others have mentioned, we have some very difficult, complex cases, and occasionally those cases are not going to go as well as we hoped. So how do we deal with that? And we have a very robust peer support network, and that includes faculty, residents, some of our CRNA staff. And they really have been very helpful to each other. And I was going to let Dr. Mayabu talk about an example, of a case that she really assisted with.
So because, I'm really big on clinical experience for our junior attendings as well as for residents, we do deal with a lot of, complex cases here. And I remember even just starting here as a junior attending, I had to learn a lot of new cases that I wasn't comfortable with, and bad things happen, right? So that's what you guys want to really look at, is how programs deal with when bad things happen, whether it's a patient outcome or a family death or stuff like that. So when I encourage you guys to go really talk about those kind of situations at the breakout rooms. And I advise the residents to do that when they go look for private practice jobs. Contracts and the new relationships are built on how departments and programs deal with when things go badly. So we don't have to make up, situations. It happens, in our field, and that's why we are here. And that's why, we are highly trained professionals. And so we had a recent event where it was a bad outcome for almost everybody involved. And when something bad happens, it takes down multiple teams, it was the 6th floor, it was the OB suite, but then our team from the ORs rushed up, et cetera. And just, the residents, many residents were affected by the situation. And so how do we deal with the situation with the poor outcome? The first thing is, I think the leadership here, not just me, but everybody here, we want to be aware of it. And so the chief residents, who we feel are the leaders of the residents, will notify us of something. This, of course, we already found out. So we are first communicated that this event has happened, or we found out ourselves, and we reach out, and immediately within 48 hours, we've already, let the people involved know that we are available. They do not have to reach out to us, but we reach out to them, and we just want to listen, and we provide the resources. So we basically had a couple sessions. An outside third-party behavioral wellness center, Karen Miyota, came in and kind of, helped run a session where we basically listened and support, and it's not about any patient information. It was just, how is everyone doing? And we like to check in on people, and and that's what we feel builds a strong department, builds a strong residency, builds strong anesthesiologists, especially when we're dealing with ASA4 cases, stuff like that. So we encourage you to cast the residents out in the breakout room, but we're highly involved in all these kind of situations.
And then the next question to address is, how does the program deal with feedback from the residents? And, I think this is one of the things that we really do well, and, absolutely ask the residents and make sure they agree. But, we have a variety of mechanisms. We have the Education Steering Committee, which has 2 class representatives per class plus the chief residents. And it's really a special meeting that we do every month. We have about 4 or 5 vice chairs that attend on a regular basis. Dr. Canison attends on a regular basis. Myself and Dr. Mayabui attend. And it's important to have the senior leadership there, because a resident can raise a concern, and then someone like, Dr. Canison, Dr. Turner will say, hey, that's a great idea, let's do X. So it allows us to really make a change in the moment, as opposed to, the resident raising a concern and then I make a meeting to meet with someone who then meets with someone else. Like, I really like that day-to-day decision-making. We also frequently have the residents reaching out to the chief residents and using the chief residents as a conduit for us, because sometimes I understand residents don't want to raise the concern themselves. So by using the chief residents, they can raise an anonymous concern, but we can get that feedback early on. The retreat we do every year, we're going to do that in a couple weeks. We're going to do it in this, it's kind of like a, not a beach house, but it's like a complex on the beach that we're going to use the time, spend the day literally just talking to the residents, like, how are things going? What should we do differently? What should we do better? Those kind of things. And then lastly, myself and Dr. Mayabui and others, we try to meet with each class on a quarterly basis, just to kind of touch base, like, how are things going? Like, what kind of things can we work on? The goal is to make it easy to raise a concern and to validate, even if I can't fix the concern, the goal is to validate that the fact that you're raising it is a real thing. And sometimes, unfortunately, the answer might simply be, I can't make the OR start at 9 a.m. But it's still worth your while to listen to it. So we're almost out of time, Dr. Mayabui. Is there anything else you want to add before we transition to the breakout rooms?
I think that's most of the questions that people had asked, but we're always available. You guys know how to reach us at all times. So
we're going to take a couple-minute break. We'll start moving everyone to the breakout rooms. I always like to make the point, the breakout rooms are going to be you guys plus the residents. I don't join the breakout rooms, Dr. Turner, none of us are on the breakout rooms. We're not meant to watch it. This is purely for your benefit. Feel free to ask the residents anything you want. And I've always made a point to the residents to be frank and tell the truth, because I'd rather you hear the good and the bad and know exactly what you're getting with our program than try to hide things and have you guys ultimately be unhappy. So feel free to take advantage of that time. And, like I said, the residents will happily tell you everything you ask about our program. So probably going to be about a 2-minute break, and you'll automatically get transitioned to the breakout rooms when the time comes. So it was nice talking to you all, and I look forward to seeing you, hopefully, soon.